involves what is like security information. Security agencies are not out there like handing out information like party packs. They are holding it. You know what I mean? And it's always been like that. I believe we still have an official Secret Act, which even though it's how many years old, I believe it's from the 60s. You know, which people will still hold on to. In fact, I saw an article a while back that said that sometimes even information that is publicly available in newspapers, you know, if you put out an FOI request to a government agency, they will just come back to you default and say, no, this is confidential. You know, so there's still a lot of the hangover of the years when there was no information available. But honestly, I must also say that I think that through some of the work that my office has done, I think we have put out more information than any other government in the recent history of Nigeria. Now, that's not to say it's enough. Obviously, people are, but I think that we have done, and my team has personally done a lot more than anybody I know, or than any time I've been aware of in government, in terms of putting out government information. You know, so it makes sense then to say that, look, okay, we're not where we used to be. We're not where we would like to be, but I think it's also important to look on the positive side and say, okay, look, we're not where we used to be. So, for example, I've given this example a bunch of times. I said that the last government spent 5 years in power, and this was 5 years, and now, the 5 years are over now. There is not a single digital archive of any policies or anything by that government anywhere on the internet. There's nothing. It's a loss in two ways. It's a loss for that government, and it's a loss for the people of Nigeria. There wasn't even a functioning State House website. There were no official social media accounts. So this is the first time that we have functioning social media accounts for governments. Now you may quibble about how much information is coming out actually, but I think we've got to acknowledge that I don't think we are where we used to be. And look, if my job ends today and I have to hand over, I'm looking forward to handing over a whole bunch of assets, social media accounts, a website that will contain some amount of government information that you can engage in.
Great. We have 4 minutes, so each of the speakers, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to respond to the question and also give you a final word.
No, I think I can give up on time. I think I've done enough speaking.
No, I mean the other 3 speakers, sorry.
Wow. I think to answer the question, is the media doing enough? No. I acknowledge that we're not doing enough. And I think we can't have this conversation without recognizing and agreeing that there is a credibility issue with the Nigerian media currently. It is a big credibility issue. While governments will always have credibility issues, the media of a country, their credibility issue should be much less, on a lower ranking if you were to rank it. So we have a massive credibility issue. Nigerians will look at news from what we might have considered primary sources in the older day, the more traditional mediums, and now you have to question them. You have to question what's coming out of them. You have to question who's putting it out. We no longer have the ability to trust them as easily as we used to, and we have to acknowledge that, and I think that's work that the media has to do. I'm always very iffy with relation and self-censorship. I see what happens. When a media house gets a fine of 500,000 or 1 million, you don't need to ask them to censor themselves. They'll do it for you. And you don't even need to ask the OAPs or the broadcasters to do it, because a lot of the times, these fines are passed down to the media workers. And guess what? I'm not going to want to pay another fine. What do? I self-censor myself. So when we talk about regulation and all that, I'm always very, very iffy about it, because while the media has a credibility issue and we're not doing enough, when we start bringing in issues of censorship and let's not even talk about the Nigerian Guild of Editors. I wonder sometimes what they're doing. No disrespect to anybody. I have an editor, a fantastic one, but I question what their annual and sometimes biannual meetings are truly all about in the space of what's happening with the media in Nigeria. So we have a lot of work to do. We haven't done enough. There's a lot more to do. There are a lot more tools available for the media to use, and there's really no excuse for the state of what our media is. And if we can't address the credibility issue that the media has, it's going to become a bigger fight, especially in the space of fake news, especially as Nigeria goes to elections in 2019. We already see what's going on online. It's going to be crazy. Then someone talked about the issue of ownership. He's right. Politicians are going into the media massively, and they're doing very well to hide who owns what radio, newspaper, or television station. There's no lie to that. I know a number of them, those ones coming online, and when you hear the people behind it, you're like, really? And there's not going to be legal framework, because the people who are going to help you create the legal framework are the ones who benefit from the ability to own media organizations. So let's not deceive ourselves. There's not going to be legal framework because they benefit from the ability to hide and maybe find themselves owning media organizations sometime in the future. So I think for me, it all comes back to education and literacy. The more educated our people are, the less likely they are to fall for fake news. The more they will insist on more credibility and factual reporting, the more they'll know what news mediums or organizations are actually primary and credible sources. We have to work as media to educate our people. If we don't, we fail them in the long run. I think that's basically what I can say for now, but the media has a lot more work to do, and that's pressure we put on ourselves, but that's work we need to do with government. And I'm glad Tolu could say that even him, sometimes, he can't get access to the information that is necessary. And I think citizens also need to realize that it's not going to be all information you think you have a right to, that you actually really have a right to, and that conversation also has to exist in this space as well.
I think the first thing is to reiterate. My colleague, the second colleague who spoke, I gave examples of Kenya, Ghana, and Lesotho, and Zimbabwe as the only 4 countries on the continent that have decriminalized defamation. So Nigeria is part of all the others that retain criminal defamation. So that, just to make that correct. In terms of, is the media doing enough? I think increasingly, the media, legacy media, TV, radio, print, are struggling to break news because online people are breaking news. And as a result, they are falling short of what would be standard code of conduct that would be expected. The ABCDE of journalism requires that you are accurate, you are balanced, you're complete in your story, you are detached, you're fair, and all that would be equals to ethics. When you don't do those things, because sometimes because of the sensational nature of news today, you want to say the vice president said this or the deputy president, so that tomorrow you can say what the opposition has said. So the story is never complete today because you are keeping the other part for tomorrow. Or you're saying when we contacted the other party, they were not available to speak because you're preparing your headline for tomorrow. And that in itself shows the incompleteness that exists today. It shows that we're not doing enough per piece of story that we are following. Femi, fake news is purely a process of deliberate manipulation of information to mislead. So it's not an honest mistake. You know, a journalist can make an honest mistake. You misquoted someone, you got their name wrong. That is not fake news. That is not disinformation. That is just a professional mistake. Fake news must be a deliberate process of disinformation with an ulterior motive, either to change the tide of thinking on a given issue or to mask it so that people don't get the required information. So if we've understood that that is the problem, then this is not just a problem with the media. As he said, governments have had propaganda departments since time immemorial, and that's what they've been doing. What governments have done is to criminalize anybody else who's traded in propaganda, but legalized themselves to have such official departments. Now we are in a moment where governments are no longer the sole points for propaganda. That is what is causing Trump to feel annoyed, because he can't say, I'll be the sole power for propaganda. Other parties exist. But in that lies a solution, and I want to give Kenya as an example. During our 2013 elections, CNN carried a footage alleging that Kenyans were preparing to massacre each other. This was a footage that had been taken during the 2007 elections. I would tell you that through online engagement, the government of Kenya got to understand that it needed to ask CNN for retraction. But CNN vice president had to come to Kenya to apologize. This is thanks to Kenyans on Twitter. So the very people that can perpetrate disinformation, they can help in correcting it instantaneously. And therein lies a solution to fake news. That if you are cheating, correct people can intervene and call you to account and shame you online immediately. So a community of genuine engagers online can begin to change the tide on those processes. And lastly, the question of media ownership. I think herein lies the problem of current regulators. There isn't transparency in frequency spectrum allocation in our countries. So nobody knows how many frequencies are available and who they've been allocated to. And if those people who are allocated to pay any money at all. So if we begin to unbundle the secrecy around broadcasting licenses, and increasingly the digital dividend, because with digital switchover, there is more frequency available. Then begin to deal with the ownership challenge, where politicians and their cronies are having a privilege, undue privilege in owning frequencies, when other genuine citizens who would have been interested in owning frequencies and offering a platform for diverse view are not allowed. But two, this has been done elsewhere, so don't give up. I think the Eastern European countries manage, they are the only countries in the world today that have media ownership transparency reports. So you go there, you know who exactly is the beneficial owner, not the one who was given a license, the beneficial owner of a media house. It's possible for us to get there, because if we need to change the tide, we must be willing to do the right thing.
Dapo, you have the last word.
Okay, I'm not to just belabor the point, because frankly, I'm just endorsing everything that you said, and that's really perfect. I'll add 2 points to what you said about fake news. Apart from the deliberate nature, the end goal to manipulate and deceive is also the twin issues of the sourcing. Information, really, you have to source information from one. And everything about fake news is that the sourcing is always dubious. The second part of it is the quality of verification. You will struggle in vain to be able to provide any rational verification for fake news. And that's what really makes it, a product of discredit. Rather than speaking in this direction, I mean, totally with due respect, let me try to answer the question that you posed, like a dilemma about how the accountability of the media. This is a very interesting point. And in the digital environment, it takes an added problematic issue. The media has always been really accountable. Now, when we say media, in a sense, it's a very loose term. We really have to talk, because everything from setting up a website to sell flowers, that's media, to set up a comedy shop which doesn't even address anything substantive, that's media. To do a pornographic filmic project, that's media. So what I think we're really talking about is journalism. The end goal of which is public purpose. How to really help strengthen democracy how to help build communities, how to strengthen relationships. That's, I think, and when we are at this zone, its accountability is not in doubt. First, the accountability is around its ethics. Any serious journalistic institution or platform understands that it has to be guided by professional ethics. I'm not going to come here and raise my hand in any to say that this is a norm in this country or in most of African countries, no. But that is the next. Second is that, of course, the whole regime, the whole treaty regime around which journalism has had to emerge from, that the whole global environment has signed into, that's the framework of its accountability. I've been in and out of court, you know, it's for one thing or the other. The gentleman who spoke earlier about defamation, you know, we had written a story about the head of our military not declaring his assets, or rather having resources which appear not to be reflected in his assets, and he got upset about that. My job is to bring him to account to Nigerians, and that we did. He's not responding in the language of accountability, so he reaches for the army, so they arrest you, but that's not the problem, you know? Because if you want to do true professional journalism, those danger zones is not any different from the guy who's on the rig, drilling the petrol that we all use. The pipes will burst tomorrow. The health worker, the nurse, or the doctor who is doing a surgery, he doesn't know whether he's going to contact some kind of disease. So these are risk zones, and we shouldn't make too much of that. But the accountability of the professional is around his ethics, and is also, you know, around the whole instruments that we've all come to accept, from treaty to statutes and in case law. So it's very clear. It's very, very clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Dapo, and thank you, Tolu Ogulesi and Tolu Adileru and Henry Maina. Please, a round of applause for the panelists.
So I'm wearing my host hat back. Please, another round of applause for the panelists, including myself. This is how we wrap up today's session. We will be starting at 9 a.m. tomorrow with a tea break, and we'll really try to stick to time. So please make sure you can be here for 9 or about 8:30. Take your tea. Let's get into the sessions and get started. Continue to have fun. Network. This is a massive opportunity for many people to reach across the continent, to reach across countries, and have these conversations that push them beyond. So on behalf of Paradigm Initiative, thank you. We will see you bright and early tomorrow morning for the next day of the Internet Freedom Forum. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
What is